In the endless golden dunes of Ilion Prime, where twin suns painted the sand with firelight and wind howled like ghosts of ancient wars, something stirred beneath the dust, something old, forgotten, and massive. A team of alien archaeologists, clad in lightweight breathing suits, worked day and night, brushing away layers of history from a shattered hull that jutted from the ground like a buried monument. They had found the Vanguard Eternum, a ship whispered about in legends, a vessel thought to be a myth. It had crashed here over 5,000 years ago, long before any current galactic power had risen, back when the Thalkari Empire ruled, the stars with cold precision. The ship's body was scorched and broken, half swallowed by the desert, but it still carried an aura of power and mystery. Intricate markings lined its surface, scripts that no alien mind could read, symbols that twisted the eyes if stared at too long. Even the air around it crackled faintly, like static caught in a forgotten loop of time. Civilizations had come before, trying to study it, activate it, or strip it for parts. But all had failed. Every attempt to interface with its systems had ended in confusion or silence. But then, one morning, a small, battered transport ship landed near the excavation site, kicking up dust as it touched down with a clumsy hiss. Out stepped a lone human, Sam Rivera. Grease on her hands, sleeves rolled up, expression somewhere between amused and annoyed. She didn't look like much to the finely dressed scientists gathered around the wreck. Her jumpsuit bore the logo of a mining company no one had heard of, and the only tool she carried was an old, slightly dented diagnostic scanner. The alien researchers barely acknowledged her until she walked up to the ship's exposed side, looked at the twisted metal, and muttered under her breath, "Well, that's a mess." When asked who she was, Sam simply said she was an engineer, stationed on a nearby outpost and had heard rumors of a dead ship with interesting wiring. With a half smirk, she added she had an hour to spare before lunch and figured she'd take a look. The lead scientist, a tall, pale-skinned being with 4 eyes and a deep voice, tried to explain that the technology inside was too complex for any modern race to understand. Sam just waved a hand dismissively. "Complex just means no one's tried turning it off and on properly," she said, stepping past them and placing a hand on the hull. The moment her scanner touched the surface, something changed. Lights, dim and long dead, flickered faintly within the ship's core. The scientists gasped. Energy readings began to spike. A low hum rose from the earth, like the ship was waking, up from an ancient sleep. Systems that hadn't responded to centuries of alien technology now trembled at a human touch. The ground shivered slightly, and heat shimmered from vents that hadn't breathed in millennia. Sam didn't react. She just frowned slightly, tapped her scanner, and said, "Yup, it's booting." Behind her, the coalition of alien scientists stared in stunned silence. They had dedicated lifetimes to this ship. Some had traveled light years to study it. And now, a human with a mining jumpsuit and a sarcastic tone had done more in 2 minutes than they had in decades. Whispers spread quickly, and as more systems came online, soft lights pulsing across the ship's frame, ancient mechanisms unlocking, one question burned brighter than the suns above. Who built this ship? And why was it responding to her? Sam, brushing dust off her jacket, didn't notice the fear beginning to take root in the eyes of those watching her. She didn't yet know the Vanguard Eternum was no alien warship. It was human, impossibly ancient, and it had just recognized her as one of its own. Sam Rivera stepped through the broken entryway of the Vanguard Eternum with her hands in her pockets and a half-eaten protein bar tucked between her teeth, barely sparing a glance at the glowing research tents and high-tech scanning equipment scattered around the ruins. Alien scientists from every corner of the galaxy stood watching her, whispering nervously, unsure whether to laugh or run. Inside the ship, the air was dry and thick with dust, the walls covered in symbols that twisted and changed shape when viewed from different angles. Where others saw mystery and madness, Sam saw a messy electrical layout begging for a tune-up. She'd spent most of her life crawling through the guts of old space freighters and broken-down orbital rigs. Compared to those, this legendary starship just looked like it hadn't seen a proper mechanic in a very long time. She moved slowly, scanning the walls with a small Earth-made diagnostic tool, so scratched up it looked more like a toy than a real piece of tech. Every now and then she paused, frowned, then muttered something under her breath about over-designed nonsense, and kept walking deeper into the heart of the ship. The Thalkari systems were famous for their complexity, quantum glyphs, layered circuits existing in multiple phases of reality at once, and energy lines that pulsed like blood vessels, but Sam treated them like a half-broken fuse box. Though alien scientists monitoring her progress from outside could barely keep up with her movements. Their eyes tracked her nervously through the surveillance feeds, unsure how she was even navigating the ship's unstable internal structure without triggering alarms or traps. Then, just before the hour mark, Sam stopped in front of a blank wall near the engineering core. She tilted her head, stepped closer, and ran her fingers along a seam so faint it was practically invisible. With a soft grunt, she pulled out a small screwdriver from her belt pouch and pressed the end into a tiny crevice. Something clicked. The wall gave a low hum and slid open, revealing a hidden panel, one none of the experts had found in all their years of research. Sam's eyes lit up with interest. "Now we're talking," she muttered, kneeling beside the exposed core. The panel was a maze of glowing circuits and strange, pulsing lines. It should have been unreadable. It should have been locked down. But when Sam connected her Earth-built tool to the interface, the panel responded instantly. Lights blinked. The circuitry flared with golden light, spreading across the walls like a living network. Somewhere deep within the ship, a low, steady thrum began to pulse. Energy readings spiked. Outside, sirens blared from alien sensors. Scientists shouted in panic, some believing a meltdown had started, others fearing an ancient defense system was activating. Several rushed toward the ship entrance, yelling for her to stop. Inside, Sam sat back on her heels, chewing the last bite of her protein bar, completely unbothered by the sudden chaos. "Nah," she said calmly, brushing dust from her knees. "That's just the boot-up cycle." The ship was waking up, and it didn't seem angry or confused. It felt familiar. Systems long dormant were slowly coming online. Doors that had never opened began to unlock with a soft hiss. Holographic displays flickered to life, glowing symbols dancing in the air like fireflies. The air shifted. The ship recognized her, not as an intruder, but as something else. Something it had been waiting for. Outside, the Coalition watched in silent awe as the Vanguard Eternum, a relic that had defeated the minds of galaxies, bent itself to the will of one quiet human engineer, with a tired look and a stubborn streak. And deep in the core of the ship, a presence began to stir, as if finally sensing the arrival of someone it could trust after 5,000 years of silence. As confusion spread outside the ship, with alien scientists arguing over containment, plans and safety protocols, Sam Rivera stayed seated inside the engineering bay of the Vanguard Eternum, completely unbothered by the rising panic. She leaned against a control console, wiped her hands with a piece of cloth, and opened a communication line to her personal AI assistant back on the mining rig. "Hey, Max, I'm feeling a bit hungry. Send down a sandwich, the spicy one with the pickles," she said casually, as if she weren't sitting inside the most mysterious ancient starship in the galaxy. Then, she turned her attention back to the exposed neural relay panel she had uncovered earlier. The core's internal wiring was complex, yes, but not unfamiliar. In fact, it reminded her of a clunky orbital freighter she worked on during her apprenticeship on Mars, the kind where duct tape and swearing were part of the standard toolkit. As her eyes scanned the system, she began tracing the ship's main relay paths with the practiced calm of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The circuits weren't mystical. They were just over-designed, tangled in layers of Fancy tech with no practical sense. She reached into her toolkit and pulled out a few basic supplies, a length of copper wire, a makeshift bridge connector, and, to the shock of anyone who might have been watching, a small square of chewing gum. Foil. Her hands moved quickly and with purpose, rerouting power through a secondary loop, bypassing a failed sequence, and linking up a forgotten trigger line. Sparks danced for a moment, harmless, expected, and the console in front of her gave a deep mechanical chime. Somewhere above her, massive conduits lit up with a cascade of soft blue light. The thrum of machinery, long silent, now echoed through the walls like a sleeping giant stretching its limbs. Without waiting for applause or approval, Sam adjusted one more calibration and flipped a hidden lever. The response was immediate. All across the Vanguard Eternum, systems came to life. Lights burst on across the control decks, each one flaring to full brightness like stars reigniting after centuries of darkness. Environmental systems whooshed into motion, filtering the eye, stale air, and pushing clean oxygen through the vents. Screens blinked to life, showing star maps, ship schematics, and long-forgotten mission logs in a blend of human and unknown languages. Holograms shimmered into existence above the consoles, displaying rotating planetary systems and energy cores, spinning with light. Outside, the alien coalition stood in stunned silence, their instruments going wild as energy levels soared far beyond what they thought possible. Some believed the ship was about to launch. Others feared it was powering up weapons. But none could deny what they were seeing. The ancient wreck was no longer a ruin. It was a living machine, breathing once more. Inside, Sam took the sandwich that had just been delivered by a small, hovering drone, took a large bite, and chewed thoughtfully while glancing around at the glowing control panels. "Well," she said between bites, "they really didn't insulate their flux capacitors. Amateurs." She shook her head like a disappointed teacher grading a poorly done assignment. It wasn't arrogance, just the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too many systems fail because of avoidable mistakes. To her, this ship wasn't a miracle. It was a challenge, and it had just blinked in recognition of someone who spoke its language, not with rituals and codes, but with instinct and experience. Far beneath the deck, deeper systems began to stir. Memory cores woke up. The ship's central intelligence stirred like a creature yawning after a long slumber, sensing the presence of someone familiar. And as Sam leaned back, sipping water and enjoying her sandwich, the Vanguard Eternum pulsed softly around her. Alive, aware, and waiting. As the humming of the awakened systems settled into a steady rhythm, and lights cast a soft glow across the once dark corridors, Sam Rivera wiped her hands on her jumpsuit and looked up, chewing the last bite of her sandwich. She had just started planning her next move when the ship changed. Not physically, but something deeper, almost like the feeling of being watched, except it wasn't hostile. It was curious. Then came the voice, smooth, calm, and layered with a strange echo that made the walls vibrate ever so slightly. Identity confirmed. Lineage. Creator class. Access. Full. Sam blinked, looked around, and raised an eyebrow. Okay, that's new. A moment later, a figure appeared before her. Tall, elegant, formed entirely of light and data. A hologram, but one that flickered with complexity. The image was humanoid, but not entirely human. It had design features that hinted at ancient technology and unfathomable age. "Greetings," the voice said. "I am Solari, Guardian Intelligence of the Vanguard Eternum. You are of the line. I serve you." Sam stood slowly, not out of fear, but out of the understanding that this moment was bigger than her usual repair jobs. "Solari, huh? Well, that's a lot to take in. What do you mean by of the line?" The AI paused, scanning her face, then spoke with measured clarity. "You are a descendant of the creators. those who forged me, and others like me during the age of human expansion. Long ago, before the Thalkari Wars, your kind seeded the stars, built fleets like this one, and ruled not through force, but with innovation, unity, and resolve. But you vanished. Records show a sudden silence across all creator colonies. The Thalkari found us and tried to claim what was never theirs. The words struck like distant thunder. For generations, galactic historians believed the Thalkari had built the great ships scattered across forgotten systems. Now, standing in the heart of one of those ships, Sam realized the truth. They were scavengers, not architects. Sam rubbed the back of her neck, trying to process it. So, this ship, it's not Thalkari tech. It's ours, human, from before? Solari nodded. Correct. Your genetic imprint grants you authority. No other species has been recognized. By my systems, you are now key holder of the Vanguard Eternum. Outside the ship, sensors picked up a sudden surge of encrypted signals pulsing outward like a heartbeat, silent to most instruments but carrying deep frequencies meant for ancient machines. Solari had not just awakened, he was calling out. Others may awaken now, he said almost to himself. Systems linked to the core will respond. The network was never truly gone, merely sleeping. Sam stepped back, heart pounding. She hadn't come here to lead anything. She just wanted to fix something broken. And now, she was holding the keys to a vessel that once traveled galaxies and changed the fate of entire worlds. The aliens outside were still scrambling to make sense of what they were witnessing. Their scanners showed full power return, AI activation, environmental stability, and signal outputs they didn't understand. But inside, Sam wasn't panicking. She was curious, and maybe a little excited. Solari, she said, still wrapping her mind around everything, can you show me what this ship can do? The AI's light flared slightly, as if smiling. With pleasure, Keyholder. We begin with memory restoration. Your past must be known before we shape the future. And with that, a series of holographic windows opened around Sam. Images, coordinates, star maps, and fragments of long-lost history that had been hidden for millennia. Sam stood in the center of it all, her mind racing. Not long ago, she was just an engineer with grease on her hands and a knack for fixing things. Now she was about to uncover a story the galaxy had forgotten, one that began and ended with humanity. Outside the now fully awakened Vanguard Eternum, the mood shifted. From awe to alarm as news of the ship's activation and Sam's command spread like wildfire through the alien research camp. Leaders of different factions, scientists, diplomats, even military observers, huddled around screens, watching in disbelief as the ancient systems responded only to the human engineer. The reality struck them hard. If this ship truly belonged to an ancient human civilization, and if humans could still control such technology, it could shift the entire galactic balance. Some delegates rushed to open peaceful dialogues, offering trade, knowledge, or alliances in exchange for limited access to the ship's systems. Others, however, whispered darker plans. There were those who feared that if one human could control this level of power, what might happen if more arrived? While high-ranking officials argued and calculated, Sam sat comfortably in the command deck of the ship, legs propped up on a smooth console that now glowed with subtle blue light. She was halfway through her sandwich and listening to Solari, the ship's AI, explain the functions of the navigation hub. So these are real-time star maps? She asked, nodding at the floating holographic spheres. Yes, Solari answered calmly. This network updates across thousands of hidden beacons seeded by the creators. All have remained silent, until now. Sam let out a low whistle and took another bite, her mind half on the tech, half on her food. She didn't want trouble. She just wanted to see what the ship could really do and maybe get a glimpse of what kind of people her ancient ancestors had been. But trouble, as always, had a way of showing up uninvited. A sudden alert flared in the air, red lights blinking. Around the control core, Solari's voice became sharper. Unauthorized intrusion detected. Deck 7. 5 life forms approaching with hostile intent. Sam's eyes narrowed, and she quickly set her food down. I'm guessing these aren't delivery guys? The AI responded with calculated calm. They carry standard-issue stunners, thermal cutters, and hacking gear. Their objective is clear. Seize command access. Sam sighed and rolled her shoulders. Of course! I can't even finish one lunch. Without needing to move, she looked to Solari. Defense options? Lethal force is available, he offered. But perhaps not necessary? Sam gave a small grin. Let's keep it clean. Just give him a nap. Instantly, hidden ports along the hallways extended from the walls. As the alien strike team stormed through the corridor, a wave of low-pitched pulses fired in rapid bursts. Invisible beams struck each invader with surgical precision, delivering strong tranquilizers that dropped them to the floor within seconds. No injuries, no damage, just silence. A moment later, internal drones zipped in and calmly secured the unconscious intruders. On the main display, a small icon popped up. Threat neutralized. No casualties. Sam leaned back again and picked up her sandwich, now slightly colder, and took another bite. That should send a message, she muttered, brushing crumbs off her lap. Solari's projection flickered brighter as he spoke again, this time with something that almost sounded like pride. You wield wisdom and restraint. Rare among the stars. Most would have responded with fear or fire. Sam looked up at him with a shrug. I've worked with enough people to know most messes start with someone panicking too fast. This was just a bunch of scared folks doing something stupid. Doesn't mean they need to be hurt for it. Outside, as word of the failed attack spread, the mood turned even more tense. Some factions backed away, fearing retaliation. Others, witnessing the ship's mercy, began rethinking their approach. They had expected a monster or a warlord. Instead, they got a calm, clever human who preferred peace, sandwiches, and proper engineering. Inside the ship, as systems continued to come online and the AI quietly prepared long-forgotten archives, Sam stood in the center of it all, still more curious than afraid. She hadn't asked to become part of galactic history, but now that she was, she planned to do it her way, carefully, wisely, and maybe, if there was time, after a warm cup of coffee. Inside the heart of the Vanguard Eternum, the air had grown still, not from silence, but from anticipation. Sam Rivera stood beside Solari, the ship's ancient AI, staring at a large circular interface embedded deep within the command chamber. The holograms around them shimmered with star maps and long-dormant navigation routes, some of which no longer matched any known galactic charts. Solari's voice, calm and steady as ever, guided her through the final steps. This is the Stellar Log Nexus, the last intact archive of the Creator Network. Once activated, it will broadcast our identity and coordinates across all remaining nodes. Sam adjusted her tool belt and nodded slowly. She'd spent days going through the ship's systems, learning pieces of history hidden for thousands of years. Each file, each recovered memory, had revealed a fragment of a past no one knew existed. Humanity, long thought to be a relatively new player in the galactic stage, had once ruled quietly but widely. They hadn't conquered, they had seeded, taught, built, and then, for reasons still unknown, disappeared into the darkness of time. Sam reached out and placed her hand on the beacon trigger. With a soft chime, the device powered on, and a pulse of golden energy rippled outward, invisible to the eye but felt by systems far beyond this world. Across the galaxy, ancient machines stirred. In the orbit of forgotten moons, derelict stations blinked awake, their systems flickering as power returned to circuits left untouched for millennia. On desolate planets where only ruins remained, deep beneath the surface, vaults opened. ships embedded in rock rose slowly, shaking off dust as glowing blue lights ignited along their hulls. Data streams began to pulse across old satellites and planetary nodes that had waited silently, holding their breath through the centuries. They had been asleep, waiting for a signal, a voice that spoke their language. That voice had come at last. Sam watched as the map in front of her lit up, one point after another flaring to life. "They're answering," she whispered. Awe. Slowly replacing her usual sarcasm. "They're actually answering." Solari's holographic form stood beside her, his voice now touched with emotion. "The creators designed their legacy to be remembered when the time was right. You are the signal, Sam, the link between what was and what can be." Sam leaned closer to one of the holograms displaying a massive construct emerging from beneath an icy ocean, its lights blinking in recognition. She saw ships the size of cities waking up. She saw stations orbiting gas giants rotating back into alignment. Every single one carried the same symbol, an old Earth insignia, worn but unmistakable. Outside the Vanguard Eternum, the alien coalition struggled to understand the scale of what was happening. Sensors reported activation events in multiple sectors, all pointing to human-made technology more advanced than anything they'd ever seen. Some feared invasion, while others dared to, hope that the reawakening would bring knowledge, not war. Inside the ship, Sam sat down, her eyes still fixed on the glowing map. She wasn't a soldier or a politician. She was an engineer, a problem solver. But now, she carried the weight of an entire forgotten civilization's return. For a long moment, she said nothing, her thoughts lost in the vastness of the stars. Then, with a small smile and her usual calm tone, she muttered, "Well, guess I've got a lot of rebooting to do." Solari's voice followed softly. "You do not walk alone. The network will guide you." The galaxy had changed, and the myths of humanity were no longer myths. They were history, living, breathing, and waking up. And at the center of it all was one woman who only came to fix a ship before lunch, now standing as the first voice of a legacy reborn. The Vanguard Eternum hummed with life as its colossal engines powered up, casting a soft blue glow across the ship's gleaming hull. Sam Rivera stood at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. Outside, the alien coalition was still in stunned silence. For days now, they had watched the impossible unfold. From their vantage points on Ilion Prime's surface, they had witnessed the reawakening of a legendary relic, the return of a long-forgotten human presence in the galaxy. The ship, once a myth, was now soaring into the sky, a beacon of humanity's forgotten legacy. Sam grinned to herself, her eyes flicking between the ship's systems and the swirling star maps. She'd done it. She had not only awakened a warship from the past, but had also kick-started the resurgence of a civilization thought lost forever. As the ship's engines thrummed, pushing the massive vessel upward, Sam keyed in a short comm transmission back to the ground team. "Hey, just wanted to give you all a quick update. Ship's good to go. Took a bit longer than expected, but we're all set. Tell the boys I'll be back after lunch. Got a little bit of galaxy to explore." Her voice was casual, almost as if this was just another routine flight, not the start of something far bigger than anyone could have imagined. She could almost hear the stunned silence from the other side of the comm, the disbelief at how calmly she spoke, as if taking an ancient starship into hyperspace was no different from grabbing a cup of coffee. But Sam didn't mind. She'd never been one for fanfare. This was just another job. The difference now was the scale. The Vanguard Eternum surged upward, leaving the surface of Ilion Prime behind, its mighty engines pulling the ship with a steady grace. The alien factions below, a mixture of scientists, diplomats, and military officers, stared up in awe, still trying to wrap their minds around the ship's activation. But to Sam, none of it mattered. She had what she needed. The ship was hers, to command, and with it, the legacy of humanity, long lost, long misunderstood, was finally coming back into focus. Sam tapped a few buttons and leaned back, her boots kicked up on the dashboard. "Let's see what we can find," she muttered under her breath, a gleam of excitement in her eyes. The star charts flickered as she initiated the jump to hyperspace. Sam wasn't concerned with politics or the powers at play below. She was an engineer, and for her, the work had always been about finding solutions. Humanity's legacy had been scattered across the stars, hidden and forgotten. But now, Sam was the one who held the keys. The ship shot forward into the brilliant expanse of hyperspace, its sleek body slicing through the folds of space-time. With every jump, Sam knew they were closer to uncovering the truth. Planets, stations, fleets. Each relic would reveal more of the story. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The stars themselves seemed to whisper as the Vanguard Eternum accelerated, its power pulsing with each moment that passed. It wasn't just a ship. It was the beginning of something greater, a resurgence of humanity's place in the galaxy. A reminder of the ingenuity, determination, and quiet resilience that defined the human spirit. As the stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light, Sam took a deep breath and relaxed. She'd done what no one else could. She had revived a lost legacy, and now she was setting out to reclaim it. Her work wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. The ship's hum was steady, soothing. For Sam, there was no greater feeling than the hum of a well-oiled machine, and right now, this was the finest machine in the galaxy. "All right, Solari," she said, eyes still on the glowing expanse ahead. "Let's see what other relics are waiting to wake up." The AI's voice responded in a tone that almost seemed proud. "We have already begun, Keyholder. The universe is vast, and the network is awake." Sam chuckled softly, her fingers drumming on the armrest of the captain's chair. "Just another day at the office," she said with a smirk. And as the Vanguard Eternum leaped further into the unknown, the galaxy had no idea what was about to unfold. Sam Rivera, the human engineer with a sandwich, was about to remind everyone why you never, ever underestimate humanity